Hello 9:30 class. I'm so sorry I won't be with you tomorrow morning. I kind of suspected that was going to be the case, but I'd hoped otherwise. But that's okay, we have a plan B. I didn't want to waste the class period, so I just thought that I would send you a video to discuss the test that we took on Tuesday, the grades, the essay that you completed also on Tuesday, possible revisions, and where we're headed next week, and some things that might help you in terms of preparing for that week. You have a couple of options for looking at this material. You can watch the video. I'm going to try to make this one very short 15-minute video, or you can just look at the PowerPoint file that I've uploaded on Jupiter Grades. It's called Tuesday, Thursday Debriefing, or Essay 1 Debriefing. You'll just look at that. It's not in a folder. And then with that, the link that I'm sending you, you will also find a very short little quiz just to make sure we're all on the same page going forward. So last class period, you finished your first objective essay. I know we were all pretty nervous about it. Here's how the results were. I had 4 A's, 1 beautiful perfect score, so I know it can be done, 8 B's, 5 C's, 1 D, and 3 F's. So that is a bell curve. It's a very standard bell curve. It's pretty much what you would anticipate on a first test. If you are disappointed in this grade, I think this is a really good learning point because you know now going forward the format, the topic, you know how to study for it. I think we can only get better. If you would like to look at the test to see what mistakes you might have made or how you might improve that, please feel free to swing by my office or call and make an appointment, and I can sit down with you and go over study options, what might help to improve future test performance, and just to offer any sort of guidance whatsoever. I think your next test, though, you should be encouraged because this one, Objective Test 1, was very broad in scope. It covered 2 different epics and several different cultures. The second test, the Odyssey, it's just the Odyssey. We're still in the heroic era. It's just one culture, just one piece of literature. Granted, we're going to go into more depth with it, but I think you'll find it's more manageable. And it's a very interesting epic. So I'm hoping that you're encouraged going forward. In fact, going back to that, I think that's probably going to creep up on us quicker than we anticipate, simply because by the time I present the first 11 or 12 books, and then you present the rest in your groups, we're going to be ready for a review and a test. So after every book, I would look at the study guide, make sure that you have absorbed that information and that you can organize it in such a way that you can study for it for the next test. Now that you know the format for the test, I think it will help you studying going forward. For example, you know now that if you are preparing a note card or notes, for your last study guide, you would include the who, what, when, where, why, how. So for example, if I were creating a study card for Diomedes, I would know that that's his name, he's Greek, what is his when and where, he becomes Achilles' proctor in battle and he gains superhuman strength during the Trojan War. I would also know major plot points, so I know he wounds gods in battle, he is removed when he wounds Apollo, plans to spy on Trojans with Odysseus, helps kill the Trojan spy, and those are really the big plot points with Diomedes. So I think sometimes when you were looking at that large study guide, you think, there's no way that I can get every plot point. But you'll see now that the tests are looking at broad strokes and some of the finer points that we will discuss in class. The same format is true for study guide too, if you'll notice. I've got a list of names, and so what I would do is after every class period, I would study as I go so that I can create a study sheet or note cards so we can add to that as we proceed. So those are your tests. I think you did well. We're moving forward to the second one. You'll have all of your essays completely graded by Friday. I've been working really hard. I'm about halfway done. I'm hoping to get another 8 done tonight. So hopefully by tomorrow night or Friday morning, all of them will be completed. You have a new revision date. If you decide to revise your essay, that will be due by March 17th at midnight. If you go into turnitin.com, you'll notice there's a new file called Essay 1 Revision, and that is where you will upload the revised essay. You don't have to revise your essay if you're happy with your grade. And several of you should be. You did really well. But if you wanted to revise it for whatever reason, I would encourage you. I think that's a great way of improving your grade and learning the revision process. So how would I do that? I would go back to turnitin.com, look at the comments I've made, revise the essay, and even go back to the Student Success Center if not. Then you just resubmit that and I'll regrade that, okay? If you want to come by the office and talk about those comments in person, feel free to. Several of you have already taken me up on that, and we've sat down and talked about ways to improve your essay, and I felt that was very fruitful. Just a rule of thumb, please watch that originality report. You have access to it. So if you're exceeding 20 to 25%, that means that 20 to 25% of your essay is not original, and that we're starting to get some high numbers there. So make sure you just keep that down below that. Basic information, some things that I noticed as I was looking for your essays. It's MLA basic format, so it's Times New Roman, 1-inch margins. I need a proper heading. I need a works cited page. I'm just going to be grading at basic math. So this essay is worth 2 to 3 pages minimum. So if you turned in 1 and 1.5 pages, then what that means is you're actually 1/4 short of the minimum assignment, and the highest score I can award you is a 75. So from that 75 is where I start grading. So if you've got major thesis problems, organization problems, or citation issues, then I start deducting that from the 75. If you've got a topic where you can't quite meet 2 to 3 pages, then I would argue this isn't a topic that you would be well versed in, or one that you can argue. So if you've got any problems coming up with a topic, please let me know and I can help with that. I think on the next essay it will be easier because we're going to compile some potential themes in class, and I've already uploaded an approach with primary documentation and reserved material on Jupyter Grades called Essay 2 Research. Your next essay is 3 pages minimum, and you have to have at least 3 sources, primary and secondary. So I think going forward, we know what to include. Just basic credibility, you need to get your information correct. So if you have inaccurate names or spelling or events, it does affect your credibility. So when you're writing your essay, just make sure you have that information down. You do need a clear, arguable thesis statement. So it can be a statement of intent that's very basic, like the women of Gilgamesh represent an archetypal, sinful view of women. Or you can have a very specific one. Ishtar and Shamat both represent the archetypal role of women. Either one. You need clear topic sentences, and you need one thesis and one direction. Kind of a common theme I saw with some of the essays was that you're taking on too much, which is admirable, but it makes it harder for you to limit your essay. So if you're arguing that the Greeks' best contribution is art, medicine, and literature, it's too much. Each one of those points would be an essay in itself. So by having such a broad topic, you're robbing yourself of the ability to provide detail for each one of those. So just make sure that you're limiting it to something that you can prove in an essay. Just some basic tips. Don't use Spark Notes or Classic Notes as a source. I understand if you use it as a reference for you as you're looking through the epic or the piece of literature and you're trying to understand that. I get that. I think it's a useful tool, but never put it as a source. It basically shouts to your professor that you didn't read the literature and that you utilize Spark Notes as your sole form of primary documentation. And you just want to avoid that appearance. And you must have textual support when you're discussing the literature. So several essays were arguing that Agamemnon views women as property. Well, I don't want you to just give me the text. I want you to pick out very specific moments in the epic that can prove that assertion. Don't just tell me a scene. I want you to quote it. And on that notion, when you're quoting something, please make sure you give me a little bit more sophisticated integration of quoted material than the epic says. You want to make sure that that sentence flows and is elegant. Basic things on grammar. By the way, we're almost done. Quick little video. I saw a lot of comma splices, so for several of you, you're probably thinking this is really basic review, and I don't think it's a bad idea to discuss comma splices. It's a common mistake. So what is a comma splice? It's when I take 2 independent clauses, or 2 sentences, and I try to join them by a comma alone. So for example, this. Achilles is not a hero, comma, Hector is actually more heroic. That's a comma splice, because I'm taking two independent clauses, and I'm joining it by just a comma. Now you've got a couple of options for fixing that sentence. You could make it two sentences. Achilles is not a hero, Hector is actually more heroic, but that can sound pretty choppy when you start writing. Achilles is not a hero, Hector is actually more heroic. He has heroic characteristics. One of those characteristics are brave. You see what I mean? So you can use what we call comma and fanboys. Fanboys is something I learned in high school. It's just a list of all your coordinating conjunctions. So fan, boys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So I can take my comma, and now I have to add a coordinating conjunction. Which one of those works better? For me, yet. So Achilles is not a hero, yet Hector is actually more heroic. That works. That's a completed sentence. It's correct. Or we can use the semicolon. Now here's my Home Depot lecture of semicolons. Achilles is not a hero. Like I said, it's an independent clause. We're going to call it a brick. Hector is actually more of a hero. We're going to call that a brick. Now, if I'm just providing a comma in between the two, it is like adding water, and the bricks just fall apart. I need mortar. So this is where your fanboys comes in. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, one of those is a mortar. So if you combine the two, like we did earlier, and I use a comma and a coordinating conjunction, I have two bricks that are now bound by mortar and water. Now if you go to Home Depot, though, there is something that's pre-mixed, and it uses the mortar and the water, and it is called a semicolon. So if you can get that down and use a semicolon correctly in this context, you'll be a more sophisticated writer. A few more things. Titles are italicized. Please make sure you're looking at your singular and plural nouns and antecedents just to make sure that they match. So a person's hands say a lot about them. Them is plural. A person's hands is singular. How do you fix that? A person's hands say a lot about him or her. People's hands say a lot about them. And vague pronouns. So, for example, these cultures experience floodwaters, dangerous geography, and apathetic rules. This means that it's a negative culture. Well, I don't know what this is. Does it mean one, two, a combination of all of these? So a rule of thumb for me is whenever you're using this, or that, or these, or it, I would hesitate and at least make sure your reader knows what you're talking about. That was probably the most common comment that I made when I was grading. Okay, that's it. That's the only revision discussion. Here's where we're going for Thursday. Here's what I would do for in lieu of class tomorrow. Go look at the comments and revise the essay if you desire. That's the first one. Obviously, you don't have to turn in on March 17th, but you could use this class time. 2, remember that you're in groups to present books 12 to 24. Here are your assignments for those. Okay. Group 1, you're presenting first. Then Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, and 5. Again, I'll send all this to you in an email. Complete the quiz that I'm sending with this video lecture. Contact your group members to make sure that you're preparing for that presentation. And start getting familiar with the Odyssey. Just make sure that you know that we're going to begin reading this next week and that you're going to be prepared for it. I would also print out those articles that I sent you just so that you're able to use those in class, because next week we'll be talking about secondary sources and getting into groups, and I'll be having you pick out ideas and themes from those articles, and it'll be very helpful to me if you could have them. I would have printed them out for you, but it's a lot of copies. I know that's an awful lot to fit into a 15-minute video, and I thank you so much for your patience. So I'm going to upload this with the file, and I will see you guys next week on Tuesday. Remember to prepare for today and for next week. Get started on the Odyssey, finish your quiz, contact your group members, print out the articles, and that way you can enjoy your class tomorrow from the comfort of your own home. Have a wonderful weekend.